My name is David, and I am 40 years old. The story I want to tell you is so horrifying and unbelievable that sometimes I doubt its reality myself. But every time I close my eyes, the images of those ominous days pass before my eyes, like a repetitive film, reminding me that everything, unfortunately, was true. It all started on an ordinary autumn day in Vermont. I lived with my wife Sarah and our 8-year-old daughter Emily in an old house on the outskirts of Burlington. Our life was calm and carefree. I worked as a history professor at the University of Vermont, and Sarah ran a small art gallery. Emily was a happy and energetic girl who loved painting and nature walks. That day, like any other day, I woke up early to prepare for university. The weather was cold and foggy, and autumn leaves were dancing off the trees with every gust of wind. Before leaving the house, I kissed Sarah and checked on Emily, who was still asleep. I didn't know that this would be the last time I would see them in peace. On the way to the university, I decided to take a different route. This simple decision changed the fate of me and my family forever. On a side street, I noticed an old bookstore that I had never seen before. I don't know why, but a strange feeling drew me towards it. The worn-out shop sign read, "Grimoires, Rare Books and Antiques." I entered the shop, and the smell of oldness and dust filled my nostrils. The wooden shelves were full of old books and strange objects. The shop owner, an old man with a wrinkled face and piercing eyes, was sitting behind a desk and smiled when he saw me, sending a shiver down my spine. "Looking for something special, sir?" His voice was hoarse and deep. "No, just browsing. I'm a history professor, and old books have always fascinated me." The old man nodded and said, "Then perhaps this book might interest you." He pulled out a book from under the desk that had a black leather cover with golden letters on it, "The Devil's Bible." My heart started racing. As a history researcher, I had heard that rare copies of books with this title existed, but I never thought I'd see one up close. Is this real?" I asked hesitantly. The old man laughed, which sounded more like a growl. "Of course it's real, but you should be careful. This book has a power that you might not be ready to face." Thinking these words were just to make the sale more appealing, I eagerly said, "How much do you want?" The old man paused and said, "For you, it's free, but promise to be careful. Some doors are better left closed." Surprised, I took the book and thanked him. When I left the shop, I had a strange feeling. It was as if the weight of the book in my bag was heavier than it should be. That day at the university, all I could think about was the book. I couldn't wait to get home and examine it. When my classes were over, I rushed home. When I entered the house, Sarah and Emily were busy preparing dinner. The delicious smell of food filled the house, but all I wanted was to go to my study and examine the book. "David, how was your day?" Sarah asked with a smile. "It was good, dear. I found something interesting that I want to examine. We'll talk about it later." I hurried to my study. I closed the door and put the book on the desk. Its leather cover shimmered strangely under the study lamp. I carefully opened it, and the smell of oldness and something like sulfur reached my nostrils. The pages of the book were full of strange writings and scary drawings, images of demonic creatures, dark rituals, and mysterious symbols. The text of the book was in a language I didn't recognize, but some words seemed to echo in my mind. I don't know how much time passed, but I came to my senses when Sarah knocked on the door. "David, dinner is ready. Don't you want to come?" "I'm coming, dear." I reluctantly closed the book and went to the kitchen. Throughout dinner, my mind was preoccupied with the book. Sarah noticed my distraction and asked, "Is something wrong, David? You seem worried." I tried to smile. "No, dear. I just found an interesting book that's occupying my thoughts." Emily excitedly asked, "What kind of book, Dad? Can I see it?" "No, sweetie. This book isn't suitable for children. I don't know why, but I felt I needed to keep the book away from Emily." After dinner, I returned to my room under the pretext of work. I was studying the book until late at night. The more I read, the more I felt something around me was changing. Sometimes I thought I saw shadows moving in the corner of the room, but when I looked up, there was nothing. It was past midnight when I reached a page that had a prayer or incantation written in Latin. I don't know why, but I decided to read it aloud. My voice echoed in the silence of the night, and suddenly I felt the temperature in the room drop dramatically. The study lamp started flickering, and I heard a rustling sound from the corner of the room. I looked there in horror, and for a moment I thought I saw a shadow that had a human shape but was completely black and dark. I closed the book in fear and ran out of the room. My heart was pounding. Sarah, who had woken up by the sound of my running, asked worriedly, "David, what happened?" I couldn't tell the truth. "Nothing, dear, just had a nightmare." That night, sleep didn't come to my eyes. I kept hearing strange noises and felt like something was moving in the house. When morning came, I was tired and confused. Sarah looked at me with concern. "David, are you sure you're okay? You look very pale." "I'm fine, dear. I just didn't sleep well last night." I took that day off. I couldn't concentrate and kept thinking about the book. After Sarah took Emily to school and went to the gallery herself, I went back to the book. This time I opened the book more cautiously. The pages seemed different, as if the text had moved. I came to a page that showed an image of a satanic ritual. Under the image, a text was written in English. "To summon the Dark Lord, write these words with your own blood." A shiver ran through my body. This text wasn't here before, I was sure. Suddenly, I heard laughter from behind me. I turned around in horror, but no one was there. My heart was about to jump out of my chest. I decided to take the book out of the house. I put it in my bag and headed towards the forest near our house. I wanted to bury it somewhere no one would find it. Deep in the forest, I started digging the ground. The weather had turned dark and cloudy, and the sound of thunder could be heard from afar. When I wanted to put the book in the hole, I suddenly felt something grab my wrist. I pulled back in horror, and the book fell from my hand. It started raining, and I ran quickly towards the house. When I got home, I was wet and shaking. Sarah and Emily hadn't returned yet. I went to the bathroom to take a shower, but when I looked in the mirror, for a moment I thought I saw a demonic face behind me. I ran out of the bathroom in horror and went to the bedroom. I tried to calm myself down and tell myself that all of this was an illusion, but the voices and shadows were becoming clearer every moment. When night fell, Sarah and Emily returned. I tried to act normal, but Sarah noticed that something wasn't right. "David, you're scaring me. What's happened?" I couldn't tell the truth. I was afraid she would think I had gone mad. "It's nothing, dear. I'm just a bit tired." That night I had terrible nightmares. In my dream, I saw black and demonic creatures coming towards our house. Emily's scream woke me up. I jumped out of bed in horror and ran towards Emily's room. When I opened the door, I saw a scene that will never be erased from my mind. Emily was sitting on the bed, staring ahead with empty eyes. All around the room, black shadows were moving. "Emily! Emily, dear!" I shouted and ran towards her. But before I could reach her, the shadows rushed towards her. A terrible scream filled the space, and then silence. Sarah also ran into the room and started screaming when she saw the scene. Emily had disappeared, and only a black stain remained on the bed. That night, our lives changed forever. The police came, investigations started, but no trace of Emily was found. Sarah was in shock, and I knew that all of this was my fault.
If you enjoyed it so far, please hit the subscribe button if you liked the video.
Days and weeks passed. Our life had turned into hell. Sarah was constantly crying, and I couldn't forgive myself. At nights, I would hear demonic laughter and see shadows moving in the house. One night, when Sarah was asleep, I decided to go back to the forest and find the book. I had to find a way to bring Emily back. In the darkness of the forest, I searched with a flashlight for the place where I had buried the book. Finally, I found it. The book was still there, but now it seemed to have a pulse. With trembling hands, I picked it up and returned home. In my study, I started reading the book. This time, it seemed like the words had found meaning. I understood that to bring Emily back, I had to make a great sacrifice. The book talked about a deal with darkness. I don't know how much time passed, but when I came to my senses, Sarah was standing in the doorway, looking at me in horror. "David, what are you doing?" I looked at myself. My clothes were torn and my hands were bloody. On the floor, strange symbols were drawn with blood. "Sarah, I just wanted to bring Emily back." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "David, you're going crazy. We need to get help." But it was too late. At that moment, a roar came from the depths of the earth, and the house started shaking. Black shadows came out from every corner and rushed towards us. Sarah was screaming, and I was trying to protect her, but the shadows were stronger. They took Sarah, and I could only watch in horror as my wife disappeared into the darkness. After that night, I was left alone. The house that was once full of love and laughter had now turned into a dark and horrible place. Every night, I hear the screams of Sarah and Emily calling me from somewhere far away. I tried to destroy the book. I burned it, threw it in acid, even tried to tear it apart. But each time the next morning, the book was intact on my desk. Now I am imprisoned in this house. I can't go out because I'm afraid the shadows will follow me. Every night they get closer to me. I know that one day they will take me too. This is my story, the story of a man who thought he could uncover dark secrets, but instead lost his family and his life. If you are reading this, I warn you, some doors are better left closed. Some books should not be read. And if you ever see a book titled The Devil's Bible, run. Run and never look back. I can no longer run. They are coming closer. I hear their laughter. The shadows are engulfing me. These are the last words I write. Goodbye, world. And if anyone is reading this, please be careful.